Starting us off tonight is Bharat Verma-Murthy. He's the former deputy director of the National Economic Council, somebody who knows a lot about all of these issues. Let me just start here with the tariffs, just because they happened today, and I think we're all trying to make sense of them. I mean, speaking to reporters today, Trump said, quote, sometimes the country will eat it. Sometimes Walmart will eat it. I don't want the consumer to pay. I mean, no one wants the consumers to pay. But explain why that is just not reality-based.
Look, the consumers are going to pay in the vast majority of cases. In fact, Walmart itself said that consumers are going to ultimately be eating the cost of most of these tariffs. You're talking about a very significant increase in the costs that these companies are facing. He announced today he wanted to do a 50% tariff on the European Union. This comes on the heels of an even larger tariff on China. If you impose those costs on companies, the options that they have are either to not import that good, which is how you end up with shortages of goods that we need in the United States, or they try to pass along the cost to consumers on the back end. And that means a 25-30% increase in some of the costs that people are facing for everyday products. You know, there's a report out about how much it would affect young parents of young children who need strollers, diapers. All of these goods are going to be going up by 25-30% because of the China tariffs. And it's on top, as you said, of the impact of this GOP budget bill, which is also going to put the hammer to lower income and middle income families.
I want to get to that because there's a lot. We were just talking about this before we came in air. There's been a lot of focus on the cost of phones. Like everybody has a phone of some sort. There's estimates out there they could go up 2 to 3 times if they're built in the United States. What about these EU tariffs, if he puts them in place? What kind of things would be impacted? What should Americans expect their costs would go up on?
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look at the top 10 imports that we get from the European Union, it's a lot of what we would call intermediate goods. It's things that American companies need to use to build something else in the United States. Chemical products, machinery that American manufacturers use to then build auto parts here in the United States, for example. And so, ironically, the tariff on the EU, by raising the prices of intermediate goods that American manufacturers need, is going to make American manufacturing less competitive, because it means that all these companies that are relying on these goods are going to face higher costs. That means that what they try to produce is going to be more expensive compared to a German company or a Brazilian company. So the intended beneficiary of all of this, supposedly, is American manufacturing. But the combined effect of all of these tariffs is actually going to be hurting American manufacturing. And you see that when you actually talk to American manufacturers.
You were making this point, we were just talking about this, about the impacts of the Medicaid cuts. And the number that's been out there about the impacts of people who could lose health care is about 13.7 million. There's a couple of different reasons for that. Sometimes that's 1 in 25 Americans, by the way. For mathematicians, you're better at math than me. For people who think this doesn't impact them, they won't see the impact of this. Explain how massive these cuts could be on people.
Yeah, it's a devastating cut. And the way that they're imposing these cuts really matters, because what they're saying is we're going to impose harder work requirements on people on Medicaid, meaning if you're not bringing in income from a job, you're going to lose your Medicaid. Well, think about that for a second. Imagine that we have an economic downturn, maybe caused by tariffs. The unemployment rate goes up to 5, 6, 7%. Through no fault of your own, you lose your job because companies are doing layoffs. All of a sudden, you lose your health care access, too, because you can't get Medicaid. You try your best to find a job, but you can't do it. The other thing is that these are paperwork requirements that are very onerous. And we've seen that in the past when states have tried to do these types of requirements, the vast majority of people who lose their benefits are eligible, meaning that they should have qualified for it, but they just didn't fill out the paperwork right. They didn't submit it exactly on time. They didn't have the right attachment to show exactly what their income was. So you're really kicking 13 million people off of their health insurance, many of whom should have qualified for this. And at the same time, as you put up on that chart, handing out what turns out to be a $450,000 average annual tax cut to somebody in the top 0.1%. It's just the priorities are completely backwards.
I expect we have a long road ahead here, and I hope you will come back and keep talking to us about it as we try to break through all the policy wonky important pieces of the details. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.